Welcome to the Nest Podcast, your home for nerd entertainment and sports talk, where your hosts, Brandon and Zach, hash out what's happening in video games and sports every week. Enjoy the show.
What is up, and welcome back to another episode of the Nest Podcast. This is episode number 76, the Steve Hutchinson episode, and is presented by Sportszilla. I'm your host, Brandon, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Zach. Zach, what's up, my man?
How you doing?
Good, man. Just enjoying another weekend full of great football action. Probably will be the last one we see for quite some time. You know, the Super Bowl will be in 2 weeks now.
Yep.
No one really watches the Pro Bowl.
No one ever.
So, that getting said, what did you think of the games this weekend?
One was really great, and one was a snooze fest that I didn't finish.
Which one was the snooze fest that you didn't finish?
49ers and Packers.
Okay, so you weren't so impressed with the stalwart defense just stifling the Packers for pretty much half the game.
It was great and all, but it just didn't make for a good game to watch. I'm sure if you were a 49ers fan, you were loving it, but as just a guy who watches football, it was pretty boring.
I was loving watching Raheem Mostert get 4 touchdowns on the Packers. I was excited as hell for that shit. That's a dude that Harvey had on fantasy this year. And I kept telling him, like, dude, you can't take this guy out of your lineup. If you want to win, you got to play this guy because he's the hot hand. And here he is, 4 touchdowns in the NFC Championship game. Not to take away from Rodgers, though. He did have a pretty good game. Of course, he was playing from behind, so he had to sit there and throw the ball the whole time. So, I don't know. I'll give Rodgers his due, though. He did 326 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he also threw 2 interceptions.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this one is not at the fault of Rodgers, in my opinion. You can't help the other team from scoring as a quarterback. So it's a team sport, obviously, and the defense did not do their job.
It was the San Francisco defense that really won the game, and that's been the story for much of the season. Drafting the young Bosa was huge for this offense. So they will probably go on and have many good seasons where they are NFC champions, probably Super Bowl champions. Yeah, they're sure. Going to be a good team for years to come.
Yep.
And it's built around that defense. Obviously, you've got a great quarterback in Jimmy G, but he only had to get 77 yards of total offense.
Yeah.
I mean, not really great as a quarterback, but good enough.
He never had to. He never had to do much of anything. It was all rushing game, which was very surprising to me. I don't know if that's the Packers defense being shitty or just how good that running back is that they have.
I think it was just the game plan. I think the Packers came in expecting Jimmy G to be throwing the ball downfield to Kittle and stuff like that, and it just left the run game completely wide open. And once they got ahead, the 49ers were able to just run the ball to run out the clock, and they couldn't stop them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another really cool thing about their defense is they gave Richard Sherman a shot basically after his Achilles injury, and I don't know, was he cut from the Seahawks?
I think he was a free agent, but I do know he negotiated his contract on his own. He did it all without an agent or whatever, so he was able to cut out that middleman and make sure that he maximized the amount of money that he got, which I think is very smart.
Yeah, he basically did everything on like incentive based type stuff. So if he were to get like a certain amount of, I don't know, I can't remember what his parameters were, but he basically had to put in work to get money. So he'd had to do a certain amount of things, and then he'd get like
incentives. Yeah.
So that was really cool. And as far as I can tell, had a good season. He did have that one interception in the game, but yeah, by that point, it was a done deal anyway. But nonetheless, he's a veteran, and I'm sure he brings a lot of knowledge to the defense as well.
Yeah, he does. He's, like you said, a veteran, and he's going to bring that kind of leadership. But and the going forward for them this season, he's going to bring Super Bowl experience, much like Jimmy G is going to bring that to the offensive side. Being that he's never started a Super Bowl, it's a little bit different for him, but he's been to multiple Super Bowls as a backup. So he's seen firsthand media days. He's seen all of the pressures that surround this game. And I think he's going to be able to handle it probably better than Patrick Mahomes will, who's never been to this stage in his career.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be a huge deal for Mahomes, whereas Garoppolo's been there. He's seen all the sights and knows what it feels like. But like you said, it's going to be different because he's starting, but it's still better to be there than not to ever been there at all.
Yeah, I agree. But, we mentioned that the Chiefs won. They beat the Titans. Everyone's Cinderella team died out. Unfortunately for everybody who was loving on them and all that stuff, but it happens.
Yeah.
They're not going to win every time. They had the toughest road of anybody else to the Super Bowl. They had to go through the Patriots. They had to go through the number 1 seed Ravens, and then they had to go into Arrowhead. And we said it on the podcast that it probably wasn't going to happen for them. They came up just short. They started out hot. They came out looking really good, but then the Kansas City offense just started clicking. And once they start getting going, it's hard to stop them.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a phenomenal game for that offense. They didn't make many mistakes.
Yeah, they were able to just consistently move the ball, and then Mahomes was putting up Madden type plays where he was hitting the spin move at the goal line and fighting for the extra yards. God, both of these guys, Rodgers and Mahomes, I love to give them shit. I can't really stand them, but they both performed.
Right.
Rodgers came up a little bit short, but it's not his fault. And Mahomes carried his team. So
yeah,
him and Tyreek Hill, they set the field on fire. But, before we came on, I saw rumors floating around that one Eli Manning is contemplating retirement and is expected to post some sort of announcement that he's intending to retire. What do you think of that?
I'd say it's due time. He probably should have retired a few years ago, but he can ride off in the sunset. He's a 2-time Super Bowl winner and relatively good career. He kind of fell off late in his career, but I mean, what can you do about that? So, yeah, it's about time that he hangs it up.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's anytime these guys decide to hang it up, it's bittersweet because it's like, oh, that's somebody that I've watched for year after year after year, and I've enjoyed watching their career. And then you've got the guys that retire really early and shocks us all, like was it Kuechly from the Panthers, just up and retired, 28, 29-year-old kid that retires. So it's kind of crazy because you want to see these guys play out these long careers and have these Hall of Fame-esque careers, but then you also have the guys that are calling it quits too soon.
Yep.
Too soon, I put in air quotes.
Yeah. I think it all depends on the player and, more importantly, their position. If you're a pocket passer quarterback and you have a relatively decent O-line for most of your career, you probably don't get much damage. In Kuechly's position, I mean, he's hitting guys every play basically. So I think for him, his sustained injuries and specifically his concussions really were the determining factor for his early retirement, and he's probably saving himself, years off of his life by retiring early, and he might be able to be an old man that doesn't, not remember his 20s or something like that. So I understand it both ways. A lot of guys can't, play as long as a lot of quarterbacks can because they get hit a lot or they hit a lot themselves. So it all depends.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And there are, like several guys even this season before the season started that retired. Andrew Luck, Rob Gronkowski retired in the off season before the season started. So multiple guys that are in their 20s, early 30s they're calling it quits because of those reasons that you mentioned. They get hit a lot. They've been beat up too much. I wouldn't be surprised if we see guys like Phillip Rivers hanging it up soon. Matt Stafford hanging it up soon. Hell, maybe even Matt Ryan hanging it up fairly soon because they take a beating year in and year out. And they've got young kids that are coming along that are doing everything that they can't do now. They're more mobile. The needs of the NFL has changed to where now you almost need a quarterback with wheels.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And especially in the case of Phillip Rivers, I mean, what's he going to do? A team's going to sign him for a 1 or 2 year deal. You can't expect much out of him at this point. So
it's the same thing I've been saying about Tom Brady. What's a team going to do? Bring in an old vet for what? Like, unless you have a team that's built to win now and it's got an elite group of wide receivers, then you're not going to bring in somebody like a Tom Brady and pay him top tier quarterback money. That makes no sense.
Yep.
I don't get that, but somebody might do it. And the Tom Brady saga is going to be something to watch in the offseason. Of course, he becomes an official free agent on the first day of the league, whenever that is, like March or April or whatever it is. So that'll be interesting to watch to see if Tom Brady, in fact, does leave New England in free agency or if he signs another contract. I hope he doesn't. I hope he's actually gone in New England if he's going to go. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It frees up his spot for the future because, like you said, he really can't give anything else to the team. I mean, 6 Super Bowls is plenty for anybody. So at this point, if they pay him, I hope it's only for 1 or 2 years, and that'll be his ride off into the sunset years, because him and Phillip Rivers honestly can't really afford, or they can't really provide anything to a team other than their knowledge, I guess. Like, if you're going to try to put them ahead of some young guy and the young guy can maybe learn a thing or two, but I don't know. I don't know what to do with those two guys.
Well, I mean, the reports all week that I've been reading are that, Tom Brady took Patrick Mahomes aside last year after the AFC Championship game and kind of mentored him, told him a thing or two, and then Mahomes even said that he took a lot of what Brady was telling him and applied that to how he approached this season and how he's been playing this year. So you could say that Brady's hand has influenced both quarterbacks that are in this year's Super Bowl. So why wouldn't you want somebody that can do that as an offensive coordinator or a quarterback's coach or something to do in your organization? That's the route that I see the Patriots needing to take if they hope to be successful. I laid out that whole scheme a couple weeks ago where I kind of went a little off the rails, but that's how you keep him in your organization and keep everybody happy, and most importantly, keep the championships rolling into Foxborough.
Right. Yeah. He's not going to be able to do it, and he proved that this year. So you got to get the wheels moving.
But while we're talking about all this, it's the perfect opportunity to talk about this week's Sportszilla post of the week, and it's actually posted by my boy Matt Janes. And he shared it immediately after the Chiefs won the AFC Championship. And it's a classy photo of a Chiefs fan just casually taking a rib out of his pocket and eating it. Yep, that's Kansas City for you.
Yeah.
Those are the Chiefs. That's who is going to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. and everybody hates New England. We don't do shit like that, right?
Hey, I can't blame them. They've got amazing barbecue in Kansas City, so he's just being thrifty. He's not trying to pay the NFL stadium prices.
Oh God, man, stadium prices are ridiculous, aren't they?
I wouldn't know. I haven't ever been to an NFL game.
Okay, well, they're pretty much the same at MLB games. MLB's prices are ridiculous too, and I know you've been to a few of those.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the same. You can expect to pay $12 for a beer.
Yep.
$11 for a plate of nachos, whatever it is. So.
Yep. What was that one? The one stadium that opened up a Chick-fil-A, but they were still going to remain closed on Sundays.
That's Justin's Falcon Stadium there in Atlanta. Yeah, the fucking assholes. They bring in a Chick-fil-A. Everybody's all excited, like, oh, I'm going to get my nuggies going on at the game and all that shit. Nope, closed on Sundays. So guess what? The Falcons might get to play one Thursday, might get to play one Monday game every week or whatever, or every season. But other than that, what do you have that there for? When concerts, when monster trucks are in town, shit like that. When wrestling's in town, that they get to have Chick-fil-A. But your football fans, the people that you built the stadium for, built this for a football team, right? Get the
Genius
fuck out of here, Atlanta.
That's funny.
You know that segment on one of the NFL shows where they're like, "Come on, man." I feel like that was a move that should have been on Come On, Man at one point in time.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, man. We're going to have to give Justin hell over that one. You know, and here's a question that I was going to ask Justin. I'm really sad that he's not able to be on, but he's dealing with some real world stuff. We talked about it a little bit on our baseball episode with Roy. Roy, that he collapsed in the boxing match last Thursday night. At the end of the match, he collapsed in a heap and has been in a coma pretty much ever since. There's no real updates or no new news to report on that extent, but Justin is very close to the situation and is dealing with a lot of stuff. And he called me before we came on and apologized for not being able to come on. And I was like, dude, you're dealing with stuff that's way more important than bumping your gums about sports with us, you know?
Yep.
But he plans to be back on next week, and we hope to have his cousin on next week as well, the Elizabethton Cyclone state champion kicker. So that'll be cool to have both of them on next week, and maybe we'll have positive updates on Roy to be able to pass on as well.
For sure.
But I know they still have their GoFundMes and all that stuff going on. So if anybody's hearing this and would like to just share it, let people know about Roy's story, about what's going on, just please reach out, share it. We would appreciate it, and the family would appreciate it. So thank you. UFC 246 came and went, much like the main event came and went in the blink of an eye.
Boy.
40 seconds. We waited all this time for Conor to come back. All of this time for him and Cowboy to lock it up, and it's going to be a stand-up war. These guys are going to trade punches all night long. It's not going to even have the hint of going to the ground. 40 seconds.
It reminds me a lot of Conor's Aldo fight. Huge build-up. You know, it's going to be the craziest fight Conor's ever had in 13 seconds. Aldo didn't even get a fucking punch off. Did Cowboy even hit Conor with anything?
I don't recall. If he did, it wasn't much of anything. It seemed like the shoulders is what really did the most impact from Conor. When they would be tied up close, Conor was throwing jab punch shoulders. Mm-hmm. And that's interesting. You don't see that very much in UFC, but it's an old school boxing technique that they used to do. So it's kind of crazy that he implemented that. Maybe he did learn something from Mayweather.
Right. Yeah, that was a very interesting technique, and I mean, it worked magically. I believe that's what injured Cowboy's nose, and it started to bleed after that. So, yeah, I mean, he's crafty for sure. A lot of people think he's just a boxer that fights MMA, but he's very crafty.
Yeah, he's definitely evolved into a complete athlete. But 40 seconds, Cowboy, you didn't show me anything.
Yeah, that was a god awful showing from Cowboy.
I know Cowboys had the issue before with the broken nose. I believe it was in the Ferguson fight when he broke his nose and then tried to blow it, and the whole side of his face was swollen up and all that stuff. So maybe it was just one of those things where he knew that he had broken his nose again by those shoulders, and he just was like, fuck it. I'm only getting paid $200,000 in this fight anyway. Connor's getting $3 million, win or lose. Fuck this shit.
Yeah, and there's got to be something too. Not saying that he knew he was going to lose, but this fight was set up so that Connor could win and the UFC could have their superstar back. Let's just be honest. That's the way the cookie crumbles. So he's got to have that in the back of his mind. Like, I'm not supposed to win this fight. And I mean, he didn't do fuck all in that entire fight. And it was sad to watch because, I mean, there's nobody out there that's not a fan of Cowboy. But I mean, this late in his career, he has had trouble. Most of the young guys that he fights do not give him any chance of winning. I mean, the Justin Gaethje fight, especially. I mean, Gaethje just destroyed him. So it's sad to see.
Yeah, and he's had more finishes than anybody, more fights than anybody. I think at one point, I think he said it was his 40th fight under Zuffa, which is ridiculous. But that's another guy, much like Eli that we were talking about earlier, Phillip Rivers, somebody that's probably at the end that needs to go ahead and let go. I know he's got his new son now, and go off and enjoy being a dad.
Right. What sucks though is at the end, his interview with Rogan, he basically said, "I'm going to keep fighting. I don't care. I love this shit." Blah 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 blah. So he's going to be another one of those guys, just like fucking Tito and Chuck, that don't stop. So, oh well.
Also on the card, Holly Holm and Raquel Pennington laid on each other for 15 minutes, and Holly Holm was awarded the victory. I mean, Holly's usually an exciting fighter. I usually enjoy watching Holly Holm fights, but this fight in particular, I don't know what it was. Maybe she was just afraid to really engage with Pennington because Pennington has some pretty decent stand-up, but Holly was content to just get her in a clinch and hold her against the cage for most of the fight.
Took a page from Amanda's book.
Yeah.
Jermaine.
Yeah. I mean, that was the exact same playbook. And you know what? They got to win both times. So it is what it is. The fight of the night to me, and I know Joe Rogan was nerding out about it too, was the Olenek and Maurice Green fight. Mm-hmm. Those dudes had a grappling match, and it was brilliant to watch. These nice. two big heavyweights rolling around, sliding in and out of submission attempts and stuff like that. It was pretty slick. And then eventually Olenek got the guillotine choke for the win. But it was pretty fun to watch. And these two behemoths that are just tough as nails guys were grappling it out. And Joe Rogan going ape shit for the grappling was pretty funny.
Yeah. He loves him some grappling. That's funny.
Oh, he's a black belt in 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, he knows what he's talking about.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that they were saying was like, Joe, we're so glad that you're here to explain what's going on with this.
Yes.
Because he's very knowledgeable about this stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what kind of sucks about when that happens in a fight is a lot of casual people do not like it because they don't understand what's going on and they just think they're rolling around and whatever. So if you're in a position to listen to the commentary, I always try to listen to the commentary during a UFC fight because they give a bunch of insight that you wouldn't ever really get if you're just watching the fight with the sound off or whatever that might be.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm glad that they got smart people and good, knowledgeable people to go and do that, and not just the
Hype.
loud boxing announcers that are hyping it up. Some of the announcers are great at what they do as hype men, but they are not very good at the analytics. And I'm glad the UFC has always had guys that were good at the analytics side of it. And they've even provided a whole nother career for fighters after they get done with the fight game. Because look at that. Bisbing's doing it. DC does it. Who else? There's tons of guys that are always in the booth.
Yep.
Isn't it Dominic Cruz that's doing it?
Yep.
A lot of guys are in the booth, and it's great because they have an insider perspective. Whereas, like you and me, we're average Joes. We couldn't get out there and really talk to what they're going through. We can talk about what we see in fights and stuff, but that's just our little amateur opinion.
Mm-hmm.
These guys know what the hell they're talking about, and it's cool to actually hear them.
Yeah, it's a genius move. I guess the NFL kind of does it too, where they have older players that are retired and they start commentating too. And I just think that's the best kind of commentator. If the former player has enough, personality or whatever you want to say to carry on a commentary that's worthwhile listening to, then by all means, he has the best, viewpoint of the situation. He's been there. So the same thing with the fight game. I love hearing the former fighters or even current fighters when they do their commentary. It's great.
And now I guess the theme for the evening is guys that might need to move on. What do you think about the Anthony Pettis fight? Did you happen to catch it? Or
no, but I caught the highlights. I don't know. He when he fought Tony, it was a amazing fight. But I don't know what happened for him to fall to the first fight on the main card when that fight against Tony was a main event, if I'm not mistaken, or a co-main at least.
I mean, that just speaks to Tony Ferguson elevating it, that much. But Pettis has lost 3 of his last 5, including that one to Ferguson. But I don't know, man. Like, usually whenever a guy starts sputtering out losses like this, even though he's been great in the past, it's usually marking the end, at least of their UFC tenure. Not to say he won't go fight somewhere else. He's still very talented.
Yeah. I mean, he could be dealing with some sort of injury that he hasn't really dealt with or something.
That's
Who
true.
knows? Maybe he's cutting too much weight and he's older now and it's harder for him to cut weight or something. You never really know until the truth comes out. But yeah, like you said, he's on a big slump, and this was a guy who a lot of people thought could eventually make a run for the championship. But if you're losing fights that aren't even against big name people, that is not going to bode well.
No. Do you have the UFC rankings pulled up or anything? See where he drops to after this? Because he's got to be way out of the top 10. He's probably not even ranked anymore. They now do the top 15?
Yeah.
They rank up to now, so
yeah.
He might not even be ranked in the top 15 after this fight, but it'll be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I'll pull it up here.
All right. So, going back to Connor, I did see that Dana has already started sniffing around at the idea of making a Connor and Habib 2. He's been quoted as saying that's the fight to make. Do you think that that's looking past Tony and saying like, okay, Connor and Habib for the belt, or he's just saying these two are going to fight next regardless of the outcome?
Well, the Tony and Khabib fight is already set, right?
Right. It is for April, I believe.
Yeah. So I think ultimately we all know that Connor's going to fight Khabib again. But if Tony wins against Khabib and he has the belt, maybe they're going to do some sort of fight against Connor and Khabib to then fight Tony again or something. I don't know. But it is kind of interesting that they're just kind of glossing over the Tony and Khabib fight. But honestly, in this day and age with the UFC, it's all about the superstars. Tony is great, but he hasn't really reached superstardom, I don't think. And obviously, everyone knows who Conor is, and everyone tunes in for his fights. So they go where the money is now. So that's just going to be the way it is.
Yeah, that's true. I would be a little bit leery for Dana White to go ahead and start promoting that, though, because Tony's going to be a different monster. He's a guy that he won UFC gold and never lost it, but he's not currently holding it.
Yep.
You know, so he's definitely hungry, and he is definitely not going to just lay down and let Khabib roll right through him to get to another Conor payday.
Right.
So,
I'm not sure if this accounts for Anthony's loss this weekend, but he's currently ranked at 11 out of 15, so that ain't good.
I think that's what he was going into the fight.
Yeah, they must have not done rankings.
Yeah. Well. It'll probably come out in the next day or two, and then I would say it'll probably be dropped a little bit. I don't see him staying in top 15.
Right. So what do you think is next for Conor now? There's a lot of talk as to who's next.
Well, UFC obviously is wanting it to be Khabib, so that'll probably go down as Conor's next fight. He's not one of these guys that I think is going to have to fight every 2 or 3 months to move up to the top of the rankings. He was fourth going into that fight. He'll probably jump up to number 1 or number 2 after that fight.
I think he said in the post fight that he wants to fight again before the summer. I don't know where, like at what weight class or whatever. What I would like to see is Masvidal. Him and Masvidal go at it.
See, that's another thing with Conor is I don't know if he wants to settle in on a weight class and be a champion of a weight division anymore. I think he just wants to keep bouncing around and getting money fights.
I can't blame him.
Like, he has the uncanny ability to go from 145 to 170 and put on entertaining fights. Yep. And I mean, other than a title fight with Khabib, he's not chasing the gold. He's chasing the fight, the money fight.
Mm-hmm.
So
smart move, if you ask me.
Yeah, I guess, but it just leads to, Conor just bouncing around and never really getting established. It makes it hard to say like he's the best ever at any weight class because he's not cleaning anything out. He's just bouncing around. Yeah, I don't know. He's a different breed. He's an interesting enigma in the world of fighting.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it almost feels like it's a whole nother lifetime when he was the champ.
Mm-hmm.
He's not even the same person anymore, I don't think.
So imagine, let's say Tony beats Khabib, okay? And then that's in April. And then say they want to put Conor and Khabib 2 for freaking July. That'll give Khabib time to heal and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So then they got that in July. Who would Tony fight next?
I don't know. I mean, maybe some other fighter in the 155 division. I mean, I don't know. Because the rankings the UFC doesn't give a shit about rankings.
Which is ridiculous. Why put them there if you're not even going to fucking pay attention to them?
Yeah. I don't know. It's a shit show for sure. I think they've been screwing Tony for several years now. I mean, since they took the interim belt from him on an injury he sustained during a fucking press conference. It's not like that's even his fault.
So. Right. It's not like he was doing some kind of extreme mountain climbing or whatever and injured himself. And it's like, well, dumbass, you shouldn't have been doing that.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's just going to be money fights, I think. The big fights are going to be money fights. And of course, there's going to be actual title defenses sprinkled every now and then. But the UFC's eyes are set on making as much money as they can, as long as they can.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Money fights the rest of the way. It's going to be Money Mac. That's how he's going to be known as for the rest of his career.
Right.
And if they can squeeze a dime out of a fight, they're going to do it. And it'll put some interesting fights together. Like you mentioned, Masvidal and McGregor would be a fun fight to watch. Um, I don't know. I'm in, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, say what you will about Connor, but he's electric. He's exciting. I mean, he's obviously got ridiculous antics, but unless it's a Khabib fight, he can put a lot of people down. So, and that's why I don't think he's going to fight Khabib right away. I think he's going to probably have at least 3 fights before he fights Khabib, because say he does fight him and he loses again, he's back to where he was a year and a half ago. Nobody gives a shit because they know all it takes is a good grappler and Connor loses. So
Right.
I think he's got to build up steam first and, get people thinking that he's the shit again.
Yeah, and that's not a bad move for him to make at this point in his career either. He's still young enough that he can make another run, and it's not questionable. The only part that's questionable would have been, is he going to come out hungry, or is he going to come out as, I've already got millions and millions of dollars? And he came out throwing fists and ready to go. Cowboy, on the other hand, was the one that looked like he was just there to shake hands and smile and collect a little paycheck.
Right. I definitely don't think that the fight was rigged, but boy, if you do, you've got some solid evidence, because it's like he didn't even show up, and that's not to be expected from Cowboy.
You alerted me to a conversation with Wallow and someone else. I didn't even go and read it, but what was that little back and forth on Sportszilla?
Without getting into specifics, it was just going back and forth between, how Cowboy conducted himself during the fight, and does that equate to him throwing the fight, essentially. And Wallow was basically saying, you try getting your nose broken and continuing to fight somebody. It's not easy. And I totally get that.
Sure.
But I mean, you'd think from a guy like Cowboy, he can just somehow reach the next level and fight through it. And my comment was, Colby Covington broke his jaw and was able to finish out a fight. So I don't know what that says about either other guy, but I hate to see that from Cowboy.
Speaking of Colby Covington, this weekend, obviously I watched the UFC 246 and all that stuff, and my daughter Emma watched some of the fights with me. She was hanging out with me on Saturday night watching the fights, and she was intrigued by some of the women fights in the prelims, and she even watched part of the Holly Holm fight with me. But the next day we got up and she wanted to see the Connor and Cowboy fight, so I showed her that, and then we just went down the rabbit hole watching a ton of UFC, and she's actually pretty interested in it. I was pleasantly surprised.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to see that she's getting into it, and she's like, I actually like this. She likes the knockouts.
Of
she
course.
likes seeing people get knocked out. So
Of course.
that's pretty cool though. Veronica's like, do you think it's okay for her to watch that? I'm like, yeah, she's watching it as a sport. She knows it's a sport, because
Right.
she's like, she even noticed, she's like, they were just fighting and now they're shaking hands. I was like, yeah, it's just a game. It's a sport for them. And
Yeah.
she's like, oh, okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting thing. It's fun to see a kid latch on to something like that.
right. I mean, she's 9 years old. She's never really been interested in any sports before. And then now all of a sudden she's like, yeah, I kind of like this fighting stuff.
That's funny. Maybe she'd be interested to take like a karate class or something like that at some point.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk to her and see if she would be, maybe enroll her in a kids jujitsu class or
Sure. Yeah.
something like that to just get her involved in a martial art.
Get your feet wet.
Yeah, something nice and easy and fun for her to do. Um, have you been keeping track of the MLB Hall of Fame nominees or any of that?
Um, I think I saw a few little like headlines, but I haven't paid too
Okay.
close attention. I
They
think
they are set to announce their 2020 inductees on Tuesday.
gotcha.
So by the time most people listen to this, they'll already have announced it and all that stuff. But I wanted to go ahead and talk about some of the guys that are either guaranteed to get in or on the fringe. Derek Jeter is expected to be the next unanimous Hall of Famer. Go in with 100% vote, much like Mariano did last year. And I mean, I guess I can see where the precedent's already been set for the Yankees that were on this team to be shoe-in Hall of Famers. So why not? He was good enough, I guess, but
Tough pill to swallow for a Red Sox fan, huh?
yeah, I mean, he was a good ball player, but I think Nomar was better. Nomar just got hurt.
Mm.
So, whatever. Derek Jeter definitely going to be in. Barry Bonds is one of those interesting cases because he's very close, in my opinion, to getting enough people on his side. He has to get like 75% of the votes. Every year he's been on the ballot, he's gone up a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
I think they're just kind of making him sweat it out, and he'll get in there probably this year or next year. Um, Same with Roger Clemens. He's in that same boat. And I think Kurt Schilling is the guy that's being unfairly voted against, and he should have been in there a long time ago. But he's just not in there because he speaks his mind about politics, and he tends to bump his gums a little bit when he shouldn't.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I don't think that should keep you out of the Hall of Fame for your sports accomplishments.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with what you did on the field.
Right. Right. Same with Pete Rose being banned and all that stuff for betting as a manager. That shouldn't keep him out of the Hall of Fame for what he did as a player.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if you wanna essentially say we're not going to do business with Pete Rose, you're not welcome to come on. You know how they sometimes have like older players come on and throw a first pitch or whatever that might be. If you want to say that Pete Rose isn't welcome at any of that, that's fine. But what he did as a player is what gets you into the Hall of Fame, in my opinion.
Yep. That being said, what do you think about the guys like Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, who were all tied up in this the steroid era of baseball?
I'm assuming that that McGuire and Sammy Sosa aren't in as well.
No.
Honestly, all of those guys deserve to be in. We all know that they did steroids, and honestly, seeing as how they all did steroids, it's almost an even playing field between all of them. You know what I mean? Like they're all the hitters minus Roger Clemens. The hitters are all trying to do the same thing. So if they're all on steroids, it's like it's even. And I mean, at this point, with the Astros scandal, we've seen something much worse than guys trying to get a little bit bigger. So I say put them all in because for their time, they were great. And I don't think that them doing steroids affected their ability to hit a home run that much to keep them out of the Hall of Fame.
Right. No, I agree with you. I think you still have to be able to hit a big league curveball. You still have to be able to hit a big league fastball. You still have to have those reflexes. You still have to be able to do all that on your own. The steroids will just make you stronger and make you be able to recover faster from any of those nagging injuries and things like that. So is it unfair? Yeah, but Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds, those guys, they didn't need steroids. They were good enough before the steroids. So that's what I think they're Hall of Famers with or without steroids. Big Mac and Sammy, I don't know if they had Hall of Fame numbers, but what they did for baseball and in the time after the big strike and all that stuff when a lot of people were down on baseball, they sparked an interest in the game again.
Yeah.
And without them, baseball might have died out completely.
Yep.
So they might not have the numbers to be Hall of Famers, but they did a lot for the sport. And McGuire at least continues to do a lot for the sport because he is a bench coach or a hitting coach for, I believe, the Cardinals, isn't he? Or he was for a while.
I can look it up. I'm not 100% sure. I don't ever see him in the dugout, so I don't know how involved he is.
Okay. I know he was coaching for a while. I don't know if he still is, but that's whatever. I know the Red Sox still haven't hired a manager. They're still without. It's looking more and more like they're just going to plug somebody in for an interim job, which is what I said anyway is what they should do. They shouldn't rush to make a commitment with anybody. They should just plug somebody in, let them run. My wife was like, "Why can't they just manage themselves? They all know how to play baseball. Just let them go out there and go Sandlot style."
Yeah, no shit.
So, but they'll have somebody come in to be the interim guy, and until then, it'll just be whatever. Pitchers and catchers report in like 3 weeks. Super excited for that.
Fuck.
I'm hoping to get to go to a spring training game. I want to go down to Atlanta's spring training facility and check that out down in Orlando area.
Yeah, that'd be great. So for the latest thing that I could find was from October 2018, and that said that McGuire stepped down as the Padres bench coach.
Oh, okay.
So maybe he's out of a job right now.
Maybe. So maybe he can come to Boston and be a bench coach for us because
there you go.
I mean, we need coaches apparently.
All right. Any rumors as to who they're looking for or anything like that?
Well, the fan rumors have all kind of circulated around Jason Varitek. They all really want Tech to come in and do it, and I think he would do fine. He was a catcher, so that's big in as far as like guys that are generally more knowledgeable about the game. Usually, your catchers are right up there as the highest baseball IQs, but he doesn't have any experience on the big league level. He doesn't have any experience at the minor league level as a head coach. So it's not a very good idea to jump into that kind of a relationship or that kind of a commitment with somebody that's just not got that experience.
Yeah.
Think about it like in a job at any major corporation. You've got this guy. He's well liked. Everybody around town loves him, but he doesn't know shit about computers. So why are you going to put him as your head of IT?
Exactly. Yeah. If he had any kind of experience as a coach, I think it would be a great choice. But man, just go from a former player to whatever he did in the interim to then be manager of a whole team. That's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of responsibility on a manager of a team that he knows nothing about, I'm sure.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I know he's probably got a little bit of an insider knowledge because I know he stayed close to the Red Sox organization, but it's not one of those things where he's super on the inside, like he wasn't privy to a lot of the game plans or a lot of anything that was going on. He was just kind of, I guess, an associate from the outside or an outside correspondent, if you will.
Sure. I wonder if the Mets have barked up Mike Piazza's tree.
I don't know. If I were the Mets, I would probably look towards like the same kind of route that the Red Sox are going to have to take. Bring in somebody that's just an interim guy, somebody that has the experience already that you can get to just come in for a year. The Mets are in a good situation.
Great.
Player wise, they've got a lot of talent. So they're an attractive team for a coach that's like, hey, I could come in and make a run in this National League East with this Mets team.
Yeah. I mean, they're in a wonderful position. They've got great players on both sides of the mound. I mean, rookie of the year, and of course they've got Syndergaard and DeGrom. I mean, fuck, they could make a run. So it would be terrible for that organization to waste this year searching for a manager, or to put some idiot in as their full-time manager instead of the interim spot, and have to be stuck with him for a while or whatever, and then you lose all your good players or whatever might happen. So
yeah, because eventually the free agency and arbitration and all that stuff gets to be too expensive for these stars. And a lot of teams, not to say that the Mets are small market, but compared to the Yankees, they're the small market in New York.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these smaller market teams can't afford to keep superstars. That's why you see them come up onesies and twosies, and then they sign mega contracts, and then that small market team could no longer afford them. That's why Nolan Arenado is getting shopped around. They decided they can't afford to pay $247 more million to this guy and expect to have any hope of competing.
Yep, I agree. If I'm not mistaken, speaking of small markets, I believe the Indians were able to avoid arbitration and sign Lindor to a 1-year deal. I'm trying to find that right now.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's good for them. I know they were looking at potentially trading Lindor. They were in talks with the Dodgers to do that. So doesn't mean that they're not going to still trade him before the end of the season. Lindor just didn't want to do any more than 1 year because he's ready to hit free agency and wants to go and get that big time payday. Yeah. So he just agreed on how much he wants to get paid for this season.
Yeah. So I was right. 1 year deal, 17.5 mil.
Okay. That's a pretty good chunk of change for your shortstop. I wonder what they're going to do with him in the future. Are they going to be able to keep him, or is he going to go elsewhere? That's the type of guy that you want to keep around. He's a switch hitting shortstop. Come on now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a shoe-in every year for the All-Star game. So it seems like the Indians, and we can talk about this more as the year goes on and as football wraps up, but it seems like the Indians are one of those teams that's almost tearing apart at the seams. They've lost Bauer, Kluber last year, and who knows what he's going to be like this year.
If I'm not mistaken, Kluber's in Texas now.
Oh, yeah, no shit. Yeah, they traded him. Yeah, duh, I totally forgot about that. So, yeah, they lost Kluber. They lost Bauer. They traded left fielder to the Astros. Can't remember his name. But anyway, yeah, I mean, their team that went to the World Series a couple of years ago is all but gone, and they had a great team.
Yep, and it's slowly started to go elsewhere, and that's the way that these teams go. That's going to be the way that Astros are going to end up. These guys are going to get broken apart, go their different ways, and then now they're going to have these missing draft picks for the next few years. So they're going to have a harder time plugging those holes. They're going to have to make a lot of good front office moves to get trades to get the right superstars in there while they're plugging these holes. It's going to take a good GM to come in and do it for them.
Right. And again, like you were saying, small market teams, they can't afford to pay people. You know, the Indians aren't a very big market.
No.
So, yeah.
No, and I'm glad that we kind of talk a little bit about all these teams leading up through baseball season. We're going to take basically the time off from football and the time before baseball season starts to break down and preview all of the different divisions within Major League Baseball. So each episode will tackle one division and just stick to those teams, how they've rebuilt, how they've kind of retooled in the offseason, and maybe try to see where we think their projected finish will be, and who from that division will go on in the playoffs and stuff like that. And I'm trying to schedule guests to be on every week, somebody that is in the know about either multiple teams in that division or at least one team in particular in that division that they're a big fan of. Right. So it should be a lot of fun to have multiple people coming on, multiple different voices to talk about their favorite sports teams and their favorite affiliations and all that stuff. I don't know. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Typically, if you're a big fan of one team, you know at least a little bit about every other team in your division because you play them all the time.
Sure. Which, speaking of, I did see a rumor today, speaking of divisions and your division in particular, the Cincinnati Reds are rumored to be interested in signing free agent Brock Holt.
Oh, wow.
Brock Holt's one of the dudes from the Red Sox that I was quite fond of. So if he ends up going to the Reds, I'm going to have to cheer against the Cardinals a little bit whenever the Brock Holt's at bat.
Yeah, yeah. They've got a little bit of a squad going. They picked up Bauer from the Indians, and I think they still have Puig. I'm not sure.
I think so.
They have Luis Castillo, so they have a good pitching staff. And if they can bolster their hitters, they're gonna do something. I mean, that division, other than the big three being the Cardinals, the Brewers, and the Cubs, is wide open. So.
Absolutely. I'm excited to break down all those divisions. I'm really excited to look at the National League Central. It's going to be interesting, I think, this year. I think the American League East could be very interesting this year with everything that Tampa's done, everything that Toronto has done, and everything that Boston has not done. So it could be a pretty interesting year in the American League East. Yankees are still going to be tough, though. And then, what's going to happen with, Manny Machado in his second year out in San Diego. Tatis Jr.'s got another year of experience under him. Are they finally going to get the pitching that they think that they have in their young guns? It's going to be fun to look at it and see how the season progresses. I think the Dodgers could be ready to start trending downward. I think their dominance is almost come to an end out there. So it'll be a good time. And then that's going to lead us right into opening weekend. I've got it planned out to where it leads us perfectly into opening weekend. And then we can just carry on with baseball from there. And that's going to be our favorite time of the year, of course, because that's when we get to talk about what we like the most. And we lose about half of our audience because of it.
Yeah, we do. But you know what? I don't give a shit. It is the best time of year. I cannot wait. And of course, in between all that, the XFL will be kicking off, so we'll tune into that and chime in and share our thoughts on the whole organization. It'll be interesting to see how that whole season plays out. Because the AAF didn't even get to finish before they just ran out of money.
Right. Did you see that video that I shared to Sportszilla that was the new kickoff rules that they're going to do?
Yes.
I think that's pretty interesting, where they basically have everybody stagnant except for the returner and the kicker.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It might work, and it might be something that's going to create a lot of excitement.
I think it's a great idea. It takes in the NFL a useless play and makes it very exciting, because if they kick a touchback, the ball comes to the 35. So that's not terrible field advantage. And like you said, everyone is stagnant except for the catcher and the kicker. So it's not just, these guys are rushing at you full speed before you even can see the ball. You have a little bit of a chance.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's going to make that boring play very exciting, I think.
Yep, I agree. I think it's pretty awesome, and I'm excited to see it. Clearing the benches real quick, we got to talk a little bit about LSU defeated Clemson. Of course, that's happened since the last time we were live. Last night we recorded the Nest podcast was the night of the national title game. So LSU beats Clemson. OBJ ended up stealing the majority of the headlines because he slapped a cop on the ass. Are you surprised?
Not at all.
Yeah, that's what happens, I guess. Oh, well, the big story, I guess, coming out of that is that OBJ was handing out money to the players, and that would be a serious no-no.
Can't do that. You're going to ruin people's careers.
Right? Not going to mess up his career. It's going to ruin their careers.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, well. So congrats to the Tigers. They were going to win either way.
Yeah, I mean, I knew it could go either way, but they really put it to Clemson, which was surprising to me.
I had here in my notes that Tom Brady officially moved out of Massachusetts. You know, I reported about a year ago that he put his house on the market. Tom Brady has now moved to Connecticut, and a lot of Patriots fans think that that's the sign that the world is falling and that Tom Brady's going to play somewhere else or whatever. To me, I would be more worried that Tom Brady was in Las Vegas in the same building as the Las Vegas Raiders owner over the weekend. But whatever. You guys want to worry about his house. That's what people do when they sell houses and buy new ones. They move to the new house. So that didn't surprise me much at all, but it was a little suspicious that they were both there at the UFC 246.
You think they had a little conversation?
I don't know. A lot of people seem to think that if Brady is going to go anywhere, that's the place that he's going to go. And it would be a publicity thing more than anything. Bring in the greatest of all time quarterback for the first season at this greatest of all time stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, we built this. This is your palace, Tom. Whatever.
Not a bad idea. I mean, it probably won't pan out, but hey, I'm sure they'll take just about anything at this point.
Absolutely. And one of the last things that I wanted to get to, of course, next week we're going to try to have Justin back and his cousin. I would love to talk to him about the experience of going through the state championship and what he thinks going into the Super Bowl and how he thinks kickers will play a big role, because kickers are the most important player.
Sure. I'm interested to see what he thinks about the XFL's kicking rules and see if that's good or bad from a kicker standpoint.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I've been talking to Jared, the founder of Sportszilla, and he wanted me to let everyone know that he's doing a giveaway. Now that we've reached 500 members, he wants to do a giveaway. And to enter the giveaway, you have to pick the winner of the Super Bowl correctly. And then you'll be entered into the drawing. So whoever wins, if you pick the right winner, you get into the drawing, and you've got to be in that group to win. I'm not sure what the prizes are yet. I'm not sure exactly what he's planning on, but stay tuned into the Sportszilla group, and you'll be able to enter into this drawing. So good luck to everybody out there. I think there's going to be multiple winners. Zach, do you have anything else?
No, I don't think so. That's a pretty cool little contest to do. I like it.
Yeah, he said a while back that whenever we hit the 500 mark that he was going to do a giveaway, and I guess he's just been slowly thinking about it and plotting it, and then we finally hit 500 and went a little bit over. So he's ready to do his giveaway, and he asked me to plug it for him, so I said I would.
Sweet.
All right, well, guys, thank you for listening. That's all that we have. Hope that you have a great week. Tune back in next week whenever we're talking about more sports. And I think we've also got a surprise bonus, or not really a surprise, but a bonus episode coming up for you midweek this week with Ian. We're going to give you our list of the top 10 greatest video game franchises. So if you're into video games, look for that around Wednesday or Thursday of this week. And if not, we'll see you back here next Monday. Peace.
Stay connected with Brandon and Zach on Facebook and Instagram at The Nest Podcast. And tune in next week for a brand new episode. And thanks for listening.